Welcome to Actions and Limits. My name is Justin Atherton. I'm the peak performance consultant for Confidence Unchained. With me as always is Paul Fortune. Paul is a mindset coach and the founder of A Call to Action. And together we make Actions and Limits. Welcome to the show, the podcast where we talk about the actions we can take and the limits we create. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Paul, I think now we're recently hooked up on Audible and Amazon and a couple other podcast platforms out there. So if you want to switch over to a different one and listen to us on a different podcast platform, go ahead and do that. We're available out there. And also make sure to check us out on Instagram and Facebook to keep updated on all the upcoming content and all of the interviews we have coming up. So, Paul, I'm excited about our guest today coming on the show, Kawan Glover. It sounds like he has an interesting story. So I'm ready to pick his brain, man.
Yeah, I saw a podcast he did recently, and I was just thinking to myself, man, you know, he had every excuse to give up. I mean, with the strokes and dealing with suicide, depression, you name it, he dealt with it. And, you know, his strength, his will to move on and his gratitude, you know, and his empathy that he's gained from all this is just phenomenal. Now he's helping out other people and telling his story so other people can don't have to suffer the way he did. Unbelievable man, and I can't wait to interview this guy.
Yeah, there's that gratitude again, right, Paul? That attitude of gratitude, you know, that I know you like to talk about. So, yeah,
Chris Gordon, right?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, you know, seeing, because really, like, you never know how you're going to handle that, right? You know, I think it's been a theme with a lot of our guests is, you know, they deal with some kind of, you know, traumatic struggle, and it's what happens on the other side of that is what really defines you. Because you could, you know, submit to it, like you said, whether it's suicide or, you know, drug abuse, some other type of addiction, but it's what happens on the other side of that that really defines who you are. So, you know, I'm really excited to pick his brain, and I know he's involved in a couple different projects. So, yeah, I'm ready to hear what he has to say. So let's go ahead and bring him out. So Kawan Glover is a survivor because he has lived through a stroke and 3 brain surgeries. He also dealt with suicidal ideations, 1 attempt, opioid addiction, depression, and has been $1.2 million in medical debt. Oh my gosh. Despite these hardships, he has started his own company called Overcome Adversity, which leverages his ordeal to help others, as the name says, overcome their adversity, no matter the shape or form. He is also a writer, public speaker, and a self-published author of a memoir entitled Favor: How Stroke, Struggle, and Surgery Helped Me Find My Life's Purpose. So everyone, let's welcome Kawan Glover to the show. All right, everyone, welcome Kawan Glover to the show. Kawan, thanks you for coming on the show, man. We're happy to have you here on the Actions and Limits podcast, bud.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, Paul and I were looking at your bio. You have a pretty interesting story, man. Go ahead and fill our audience in and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I wanted to be a paleontologist, and then I wanted to be president, and then I wanted to be on Wall Street. But all of that went down the drain when I got into the University of Maryland, where I studied finance. And then in the summer of 2014, I was in office one day working with my mentor, and he noticed I couldn't get words out, and I couldn't write words on the paper. And went to a doctor. He said he did some neurological tests, and said I needed to go to the hospital. I went to the hospital. Fast forward 6 hours later, they came out, did a CAT scan, and said you have a lesion in your brain. And at the time I was 20, so I was like, I don't really know what that means. I need to go back to my life. So like fix this so I can go back to my life. They said, no, we're gonna monitor, we're gonna send you to another hospital. They're gonna do a more in-depth test. So they did an MRI, one of the worst experiences I ever had. I hated laying still. But they came out and told me you have a mass on your brain, a cognitive malformation is what they deemed it to be called. And again, I studied finance, so that didn't register to me at all. So I was like, okay, fix it so I can go back to my life.
Sure.
And they said, okay, no, we're going to send you home and monitor. Fast forward a couple of days, I got blurry vision, balance is off. They sent me back to the hospital. I had my first brain surgery on August 15th, 2014. And that was the first part of the story. If you guys want to jump in and ask me any questions about that.
So let's go back a little bit. You know, in your early 20s, you wanted to be the president of the United States, and due to the events that happened in your life, you went away from that. I bring that up because I think that when Justin was younger, I think he had the same aspiration. He wanted to be president of the United States. So that's kind of a cool thing that you guys share about. Right, Justin?
I did. I forgot about that. What struck me the most is the paleontologist thing, because that's what my daughter tells me that she's going to grow up in.
So it's all coming together. So yeah, go back a little bit on your childhood and your upbringing. So obviously you have great parents that want great things for you to want to be a paleontologist or president of the United States or work at Wall Street. These are high-end positions. So obviously I feel like you had a good background growing up. Is that the case, or?
Yeah, I had a two-parent household. I have a younger sister. She's 14 years younger. I have an older brother. He's 9 years older. So I played the role of an only child, a middle child, and the youngest child. I got a lot of different perspectives growing up. I ran track and played football in high school. When I got to Maryland, University of Maryland, my first semester, I joined the boxing club. So I kind of consider myself an athlete. And when everything started to happen, I was not able to let go of that perception of myself. And I always deemed that I was going to achieve the highest of the highs. So, of course, president, top to top, I really looked into, and it was inspired by Jamie Dimon. People like that, and of course the Wolf of Wall Street, and my major in finance has something to do with the Wall Street endeavors. And I took a class at university that really inspired me, but that continued until I had more surgeries and more hard times, and those delve into like a month after my first surgery in August 15th, 2014, I was back in the hospital because I suffered a stroke. And that was the first humbling experience. Again, I was not even 21 yet, and half of my body was no longer working on 100% capacity. So I struggled with that internally, and I just didn't know what to do. I was like an athlete, so I was like, I don't have to go through rehab. My body's going to bounce back. And then there were times where I could barely walk. And the frustration and depression started saying, when you're sitting in rehab, after they work with you for the day, you have to be by yourself for those nights and hours. And I was just sitting in the hospital, standing by the ceiling, like it felt like I was in a luxury prison. Like the walls looked nice, everything was clean, I got decent food, but I couldn't go anywhere without being monitored. And that, for me, at that time, when I so strongly believed in autonomy, it was difficult for me to accept that I was at a place in my life where physically I was just not able to do for myself in a safe manner. So that time in rehab led to another humbling experience. When I was in line, we do these type of events towards the end of your rehab where you go out into the community and see how you function. And one of the tasks is to handle money. So I'm in line in the gift shop, a small item in my hand, and there's a woman in front of me, and there's a guy that's a part of my group. I think he was getting out of a wheelchair or something like that. And he was struggling to pay the cashier to count the money, to handle the money. And I just heard the lady in front of me let out this huge sigh, like, like she was being like the guy was getting in her way, inconveniencing.
Sure.
And I was just like, wow, you don't even know what his story is. And then in that moment, that night when I laid in my bed, I was like, is that how I've been to other people? Is that because I've been able-bodied and not looking at anybody else's perspective? Is that the way I treated other people? I thought about other people that may have had the disabilities I now had. And that was a really big perspective shift in my growth through this whole series of events.
I think that's a tough thing for people is they really have a difficult time putting themselves in someone else's shoes like that. And like you said, they feel like it's a big inconvenience because it's like, well, man, why can't you just hurry up? Like I'm trying to get to the store or I'm trying to leave. And all they think about is themselves because they haven't experienced anything difficult like that in their lives. And they haven't had to struggle with anything or work through tough times and, you know, all those hardships that most people don't deal with. Right. And I think it's very difficult for people to put themselves in other people's shoes like that. But for you, Kawan, you had that realization. You're like, man, and you having that step back and going, was I doing that, before I was in this position? So I think that's tough. I don't think people have the ability to really put themselves in those shoes sometimes.
And I really think it's important, especially, and this leads to a topic that's about the culture today, the lack of empathy that people seem to have. And I think that was an important lesson for me to learn early on, so I could kind of use that mindset to move myself forward as far as what I'm doing now. And the next part of my journey, I returned to school in the spring semester of 2015. And that summer, I suffered a major depression, suicidal ideations, not wanting to leave. I just slept on the couch pretty much the whole summer in my apartment on campus, the same apartment where I had the stroke in. So I felt like I was also reliving in my trauma. And it just was I spent the whole summer binge watching Sons of Anarchy from season 1 to 7, and I finished.
I love that show.
Series. That show's awesome. I finished the whole series, and then there was almost like a spiritual moment in that I was laying on my couch, and normally I lock my apartment door, and for some reason I hadn't. And a friend of mine just kind of walked in. He might have been drunk or just wandering around, but he said he hugged me, and there was like a voice, and he was like, "You're gonna be fine." And he just got up and stumbled off. And I don't even think he remembers that. And then
so was a friend of yours? This was a friend of yours, or
Yeah.
or you did not know this guy that just came into?
I knew him. I know him pretty well, but he just stumbled in. Normally he knocks or whatever. He just kind of stumbled in. He hugged me. "You're gonna be all right." He got up and left. And then I was stuck on the couch like, what just happened? And then the next day it might have been the next couple of days, so I got a invitation to get on the call for an internship, and the summer started to turn around, and this takes me into the fall of 2015. Things started to turn up, and then we went back to my doctor, Dr. Jonathan, surgeon. Dr. Jonathan Sherman was my first surgeon. He had been checking my MRIs. I got about 4 or 5 at this point, and he normally comes into the office during checkups. "Hey, everything looks fine. There's still something there, but everything looks fine." And this time he came into the office, he kind of looked around, he sat down and kind of lowered his head, and he was like, I don't know how to tell you this. And my mom and dad are in the room. He kind of looked at me and looked at him, but it seems like the mass is growing back and it's bigger and it's growing faster. And in that instant, my mom broke down. My dad was just kind of holding her, looking around. And there was something in me that just kind of clicked. And I was like, if I don't do something now, this whole room is going to fall apart. So I was like, instead of waiting to see what the doctor, what else he had to say, I was just like, sign me up for the next surgery now. And he was like, my dad kind of looked over like, "You sure you don't want to think about this?" I was like, "No, sign me up now. What's the first available date?" And he was just like, "Okay." He went to his office, came back. October 1st was the date we settled on. And that point was in September. And for those next couple of weeks, there was just a mood I had adopted where I found myself being okay with this being the end. I felt like I was coming into this realm of like, I'm at peace. My story will give some type of inspiration to somebody that, there's some hope, but I'm okay with this being the end. And that mentality festered into a point of almost complete calmness, peace. Like I was not worried about anything. The surgery was, it just wasn't a concern of mine. And when they put me under anesthesia, the dream I had was so vivid, and I tell it the same way every time. I woke up in the dream state, a white void, if you will, and in that dream, I'm in a hoodie and a jean jacket, and I'm standing up, and I'm throwing punches, and I'm like, wow, everything is working, everything is working. Then it starts to rain, and the rain is black, but I stick my hand out, and the rain's not touching my hands. And then I start to float up, and I start to lose my form, and I become like a stick figure. And at this point, I'm watching it from two perspectives. I'm watching, this is a painting on a canvas, and I'm watching from point of view. And as I get to the top of that canvas, there's like a hand that stops me and pushes everything in reverse, and then says, "You're not done yet." And then I woke up, and that's when the other side of that story began.
Hmm. Well, that's a
Wow.
pretty vivid dream there. That's definitely interesting. What do you have for him, Paul? I know you were about to ask a question.
Yeah, obviously, you've had a stroke. Can you kind of tell our audience what effects a stroke does? I know for my own life what it is, but for our audience, so they know, basically your disability that you have because of the stroke.
Yeah, so if I describe the incident, I was laying, so I had a headache on September 17, 2014 for about 13 hours. I was supposed to go to an appointment the next day, and I couldn't go to sleep because my headache was just really just bothersome. So I got up, went to the bathroom because I felt like I threw up. I threw up water. Then my vision went blurry, like smoke had slapped me in the face. And I got on the bed, and I was about to lay back down, and my right arm and my right leg completely went useless. So I fell on the bed, and then I could feel my face starting to like droop. And I called the hospital, and I called my mom, and I just told her I'm having a stroke. So essentially, it normally affects one side. And in my case, it affected the opposite side of my face versus the opposite side of my body. So I have right side weakness in my limbs. And as a result of the last surgery, I have a lot of weakness and numbness on the left side of my face. But in that stroke, I never lost consciousness, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but the deficits are definitely still there.
So what's the effects of the stroke now? Are you walking with a limp, or what's going on?
Yeah, there are definitely still right side deficits. I'm not able to completely straighten my right leg or completely straighten my right arm. The strength is still there, but the range of motion is no longer there. After when the third surgery was coming upon us, I lost sensation on the left side of my face, the inside of the left side of my mouth, my tongue. I had a ringing and vision impairment. So I was down 40% vision on my left side. I'd say the stroke just takes a lot of one side. So since the stroke affected the left side of my brain, it's, the oxygen or the blood vessels get clogged so that the oxygen can get to my brain. It left a lot of right side weakness. So right now, I would say weightlifting, I can do it, but it's not beneficial because it can cause imbalance. The walking, I was walking with a cane. I do walk with a electrical brace now. It's called BioNest, and I wrap this around under my knee, and it stimulates my muscle to lift my foot up. I have foot drag. Right now, I'm talking, and there's a lot of strain on this side of my mouth. But I did speech therapy so I can muscle through it. But those are just some of the things. But a lot of the stroke is not how it affects you physically, because eventually you can recover. It's what it does to your mentality. And for someone like me and my age and the way I view myself, it was detrimental to my mental state, which led to a lot of the bouts of depression and anxiety and suicidal ideations, things of that nature.
That must be what you explained in your memoir, that you wrote, Favor, how stroke and struggle and surgery helped me find my life's purpose. So working through all of that struggle and working through the, like you said, not only the physicality of it, but, the depression and all those other aspects. So what did you discover? What is your life's purpose now?
Yeah, it took me a while to reach it. I know in this memoir, it ends off with a very high note in that I finally discovered that my life meant something. I didn't know what it meant, but I just knew it meant to help people get through their own struggles. And, I'm starting on my second memoir, and that goes deeper into the mental stable. But the point I've come to is I've realized I used to struggle with why this happened to me. A lot of why me, a lot of why did this happen to me? This isn't fair. And then I started asking myself, when you ask yourself, your brain, bad questions, it's no choice but to produce bad answers. So I started asking myself better questions. Then I started thinking, okay, why not me? And then, if not you, then who? And then I started thinking, well, I don't waste it on somebody else. And then it all kind of clicked. This did not happen to me for my benefit. There are things that I learned about myself through this whole process. But what I come to realize is this all happened to me so I could share this story to benefit the lives and the growth and the mental state and the recovery of others. It's to give people hope. And God knows we need a lot of hope right now in the midst of everything that's going on. So my story was given to me. What I went through so people can see that there is light in the tunnel. And one of the things I learned is that sometimes you have to crack to let the light in. And when I was growing up, it was always repress the emotions and be strong and be a hero. And a therapist I had in rehab, she was just like, it's okay to not be okay. And once I started leaning into vulnerability, I call that my superpower. Empathy is my weapon of choice.
There you go.
That's when I started to really realize and start to manifest the positivity, the optimism, the drive to move myself and use my story to, I started this memoir in 2018, and I didn't get serious until the end of last year. But I think the fact that it's done now and it's out in the ethos and actually available. So like now I feel like this story is just the start of me giving people hope.
Speaking of helping people and having empathy, which I love this, that you're mentioning empathy and being positive, because that's kind of my mantra as well. I want to dive into the mental aspect of things, and you were talking about suicide, and I think with a lot of what's going on in the world right now with COVID and everything like that, there's a lot of suicidal rates going up just because we don't have that outlet like we used to. What would you say to people that have maybe are going through these deep, dark thoughts about maybe suicide? What would you do? What would you say to these people to help them to see the light, that there is a solution? You don't have to end it.
Yeah, a lot of times I battle with suicide because one, I was focusing on the past, which leads to depression, or focusing on the future, which leads to anxiety. One of the things I engaged myself in a lot of meditative practice, and I really focus on rooting myself in the present moment. And in that present moment, there are always things to be grateful for. The fact that all three of us are alive and taking breath right now is a miracle. There's a 400 trillion to 1 chance that you are born a human. And you were the one of the people that took that chance. And that was your first victory in life. So whenever I get up each day and put my feet to the ground, everything else is a bonus. It may not seem like times are going as you planned, but it takes sometimes you have to go through something to get to a better place. That gives you inner strength when you get through those hard times, when you do things that you don't necessarily feel are a benefit right at this moment. They often show themselves as being something positive in the future. I think, for my case, when I did try to commit suicide, it was just a feeling of emptiness. And I was constantly telling myself, no one got what I was going through. No one cared. No one can really relate. I'm by myself. And I have to say to some people that are listening, you are not alone. Even though it feels like that, even though you feel like everyone's telling you that with what they're saying or their body language, there are people like us out there that really care about your well-being. And you just got to find your community. I think that's really important. Find people who care, who are willing to help you. It's just so important not to isolate yourself when you're having those thoughts. And, you know, that was a big trigger for me as well, being alone with my thoughts, allowing them to fester, getting out, getting some nature around you. There's so many things, but I think meditation, breathing, and rooting yourself in the present moment, along with gratitude, it really helped me. And it's continuing to be my basis for living every day.
Juan, you've said so many good things in that statement there, man. The 400 trillion to one, that sounds familiar. That sounds like a Gary Vee thing.
Oh, absolutely. I can't take that.
Yeah, that sounded familiar to me. I like him, and it sounds like you do too. But man, I liked you saying ask the right questions to yourself, ask those good questions, talking about being in the present moment rather than living in the past or the future. There's a lot of good tips, you know, that you were bringing in there, man. I really liked everything you had to say. So I can only assume that you take this into your company now called Overcome Adversity. So tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing right now with your project.
So when I started the company, I believe I started it too early because I had just come out of surgery 2017. I was recovering for a year, and I was like, I gotta do something bigger. And that's my problem, which kind of started this whole thing, is that I'm always moving forward. I'm always pushing, no matter, I never sit still. So when I started this company, I had the idea in mind, I'm going to use my experience to help other people through theirs. And the philosophy behind that was just letting people understand that the worst critic, the worst enemy is often the person you're looking at in the mirror. People will say, well, they told me that I can't do this. And I'm like, who is they?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, and I'm like, you told you that. And that was because that was my worst enemy. When you read the memoir, you'll see that there are two distinct voices. And there's a very negative voice, and that's just a figment of my imagination who became a character in my mind that would constantly berate me and demean me and just talk badly about me. And it's often you sometimes find comfort in that. And in Overcome Adversity, it's about addressing the issues you have, but also getting you to ask yourself better questions. It's getting you to see where you are causing your own downfall in your own life and turn that around to something more beneficial to the future of whether it's your career or your personal life.
So is it coaching or what are you doing with the company?
I call it victory coaching.
Okay.
But when I ask people I work with, they say, yeah, it's coaching, but there is this level of, it almost feels therapeutic. And that's because I implore a lot of empathy. So
Sure.
That can give it a therapeutic fuel, which is why I don't call it life coaching. It's victory coaching because it's combining those two elements to get you to your ultimate victory in your life, whatever that may be.
Well, it sounds to me that you had a coach early on. You mentioned something about a mentor. Tell me about that and how'd you get into that?
Yeah, Brent Simpson. I was in business school, and one of the classes we had to take was we had to get a professional interview, like a questionnaire type of interview. We asked questions about the person's career. And he was, it was in the airport, and I was asking him questions. Hey, how you doing? I know you've been told I was calling. He was like, yeah. Like, he sounded annoyed. And I was asking him questions about what he was doing. He was just getting more and more annoyed. And he was just like, look, dude, do you want a job? And I was like, yes. And he was like, all right, show up at this address 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm on a plane. I'm about to get on a plane right now. I'm going to Vegas. Click. And I was just like, okay. So I went to his house, and he really started showing me the ropes, and it turned into more like a big brother mentor type of relationship where he was explaining life scenarios while we were in the office working intimately together. He was a lot of the driving force, but I had to confront myself after the last surgery in 2017. He continued to say, I tried to live like my body still worked at 100%, and I acted like what happened to me was a totally different person. And we just be like, dude, your body doesn't work the same. You don't think the same. You don't have the same perspective. So why are you trying to live these two lives? You have to embrace and deal with the trauma and the emotional trauma, the mental trauma, the spiritual trauma that you dealt with, and then grow from it. It's always going to be a part of you, but it is not all of you. And that took me years to accept. I think, it's funny. On August 22nd of this year, which is 2 Mondays ago, I believe, that was the first time I could write in my journal that I felt whole. Regardless of whatever physical disabilities or whatever I don't even like to say disabilities. I was just able to do things differently.
Sure.
And that's what I say to anybody that's in the disability community. You're just able to do things differently. And that, honestly, August 22nd was the first day I would say, regardless of what's going on with my body, I feel whole.
It's almost like, and like your mentor was saying, it's almost like you have to accept that loss rather than denying it and saying, hey, that's not me, or yeah, I can still function this way, and be in denial about it. It sounds like accepting that is the path to, moving on from it. And like you said, becoming whole.
Yeah, I like to call it the 8 Mile approach. At the end of the movie 8 Mile, when he was having the last rap battle, he put all his flaws on the table, and then the other guy had nothing to say. When you accept all the flaws, all the dirt in your closet, all the skeletons, and then you can start the progress of healing. As long as you try to keep that door closed, they're going to start getting heavier, and more pressure is going to build. And at some point, that can has to pop. The pressure has to go somewhere. So why not just accept it as it comes and then start moving forward? That's been a big part of my growth thus far.
I like it.
So was acceptance was the reason why you have the hope, and that's what clicked 2 weeks ago, was you accept where you're at, right? Is that the deal?
Yeah, I think acceptance is a lot of the first steps in everything. When you have some problems, you a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not a drinker. Oh, I'm not a smoker. I'm not this." That is you. That's why a lot of the AA programs are like, "I'm an alcoholic." That's the first step, is accepting. Admitting that it's there. That way you can address it. If you're denying it, it's just there in a dark corner. But at some point, it's going to grow and become a dark shadow or dark cloud that hangs over you. Acceptance is embracing to, put into motion the growth that needs to happen. And a lot of adversity you face in your life, adversity, it's another Gary Vee, adversity is the foundation of success. And I believe that. So this 5-year, 6-year journey has been not only for my benefit, but mainly for the benefit of the people I come into contact with.
I like that. And that's a pretty common theme with a lot of the guests we bring on the show. It's not about them. It's about what they can share with other people and the growth for other people. So I really like that, Kawan. What is a good way for our audience to get a hold of you? You got a website, because I know you got a book out there. You've got your program. What is the best way for our audience to see your content?
So I post a lot of stuff on Facebook and Instagram. My Facebook is www.facebook.com/overcome adversity with Kawan. Instagram is Kawan Glover. That's KAWANGLOVER. You can check out my Twitter, Kawan_Glover. Everything is pretty much my name. I post it on LinkedIn as well. If you want to contact me on a deeper basis, you can email me at overcomeadversitytoday@gmail.com. The website is probably going to come a little further down the line. I'm still building my platform. And, with the book I have now, Favor, How Struggle and Surgery Helped Me Find My Life Purpose. It is available now in paperback on Amazon, as well as the pre-order for the digital Kindle version. But the book, I'm not really in it for the money. So if you get the book and you have 6 friends you want to share it with, if you want to sell it for more, do whatever you got to do. I just want this story to get out there and get to the people that need to hear it. So again, I'll send you those links. But I just feel like my mission now is to use this story to empower, to inspire, and to mobilize others to reach their ultimate selves.
I like that, Kawan. And we'll make sure to put down all your links down in the show notes so everybody can reach out to you and check out your book. Kawan, we like to wrap up the show and asking our guests with the title of our podcast in mind, Actions and Limits. What would you say is one action that our audience and our listeners could put into purpose and do it immediately that would really make a big difference?
A lot of times, because the world moves so fast and there are things you may not have addressed in your past, rooting yourself in the moment is one of the things I do at a certain time, 3 times a day, just to refresh my mind, to not get so panicky and not get so down. So if you close your eyes, you breathe in, and then you list the things you can hear, you list the things you can smell, you can feel, you can taste, and you can see. I mean, your eyes are closed to the back of your eyelids, but just knowing those things will help you understand that right now, there's no danger. There's nothing to be afraid of. You are wherever you are right in that moment. Rooting yourself in that moment will help you calm down a bit. You know, you can proceed there into meditation, but I would say just acknowledging your 5 senses to really root yourself in that moment is a really big help for me.
I like that. And you say you do it 3 times a day. Do you set an alarm to like remind it, or you just throughout the day, you're like, hey, I need to do it again. I need to presence myself.
It's funny. You know, I always end up looking at my clock at 11:11. Then I look at my clock again at 1:11. Then I look at my clock again at 11:11, and that's when I do it. And it just that simple.
It works out. Well, with the opposite side of that is, you know, we have a lot of these self-imposed limits that we place on ourselves that keep us down. What have you seen as the number one limit out there that we need to remove immediately that can make a big difference in our lives?
For me personally, and I'm pretty sure your audience can release this, there are things we automatically say, I can't do that. Or, you know, and they've never tried, or you never given any thought, or like, I can't write a book, and then I wrote a book. Like, how you have to give a solid attempt. There's no such thing as try. Either you do it or you don't. And I believe that if you just go out there and start doing things and instead of telling yourself you can't do them or it's impossible, just give it an attempt. You never know what the possibilities are, limitless. And that is a number one limiting belief. And again, stems from people believing what their thoughts create. You have to reshape that, retrain your mind to accept that you can do anything you want.
I like that, Kawan. I like it. And Paul's over there smiling because, you know, a lot of the things that you touched on are things that, you know, that I like to talk about. The whole, you know, delete try from your vocabulary, the whole Yoda quote, right? And, you know, the idea of being limitless, you know, and just doing whatever it is you want to do just because you want to do it. So I really like that you brought that up about you removing that, you know, voice in your head. I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to make it. You didn't even try. Just like you said, it's like you didn't even try. So put it out there into the universe. If it's something you want to do, go ahead and do it. So, Kawan, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. We really liked what you had to say. You know, thank you for sharing your story with us. A lot of good stuff out there. So I would say to all the viewers and listeners, go ahead and check out Kawan Glover and, you know, his book and his program. And man, I wish you the best, bud. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It has been my pleasure talking with you guys, and, you know, I hope your audience gained some type of value from this.
I'm sure they did, man. Thank you. Oh, Kawan was such a great guest, man. There was so many little things he said along the way that I was like, man, I really like this, or a lot of the stuff we've talked about, you know, along the way. What was your favorite topic that he brought up, man?
For me, it was probably the empathy and gratitude piece, because I'm right there with him on that, and I know you are. And I agree. Like when he was talking, it was like he was like a co-host with us, because it's constantly stuff that we talk about over and over again, and it's a great thing because that's what we're trying to push to our audience is that get rid of that limited belief and the gratitude and the empathy, and you can do whatever you want to do. You just have to have belief in yourself. So a lot of great stuff, and I'm so happy that I connected with him and brought him on the show.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing was that whole ask yourself better questions. That is so huge. Like I literally wrote it down while he said it because I've heard that concept before, but I'm like, man, that I really like that because we tend to ask ourselves some really crappy questions, man. Like, oh, why is it always happen to me, or why is this? And it's all just negative crap that we're always asking ourselves. So you really have to stop and just ask yourself better questions. Like why can't I do this? Or why couldn't I write a book? Like you almost have to ask yourself questions in a challenging way to push yourself to do that. Like, what do I really want? Right? Am I motivated to do this? Am I committed to this project? And if you answer those questions, some of the things you're going to get rid of and go like, hey, look, I'm not committed to this thing, or I don't really want to do this. Great. Clear your shelf for the things that you are committed to, the things that you are passionate about, and then move on full steam ahead. So I think that was my favorite thing that he brought up. But obviously the don't try, that's one of the big things I talk about all the time, that Yoda quote, right? That there is no try, there only is do and do not.
And the limitlessness.
Yeah. And then the limitless possibilities, right? That you can do whatever the heck you want to do. Just go do it. Stop, having that negative talk in your head. But no, what a great guest. I would suggest everyone go out there and check out his memoir. I think that'd be an interesting read. I think he came from like the financial background, and then he like struggled, all the things he wanted to do. And then he's like, hey, now my life is taking a different direction, and seeing the struggles and working through that. And then, even him recounting that, standing in line and seeing how someone else was reacting to, the guy in a wheelchair having to struggle pain, and how much of an inconvenience that was. Like, I think a lot of people don't step back and think about how they, react to things like that. Hey, how about you help the guy out rather than, huffing and puffing in line behind him, right? Lend a helping hand. But no, he was such a great guest. So I'm glad that Kawan could come on the show, and we're going to put all of his contact info down in the show notes so everybody can get a hold of him. So, well, let's wrap up the show with another segment of Ask Paul Anything. I thought this was a very interesting question that came in. This is from Sarah in Nebraska. It says, Paul, do you have any regrets?
Do I have any regrets? I think if I have any regrets, it would probably be in the realm of maybe early on in my life with baseball. Maybe I could have gone further than I did, but a lot of it was limited belief that we talk about. Listening to the noise of other coaches and not believing in myself. So probably after high school, it was probably not the pursuit of really hammering it hard in baseball. I really didn't give it a real go after high school, and if I have a regret, that's probably that.
Okay, that's fair. I think a lot of men out there will have the sports related regrets, right? It's like, I should have tried harder. I should have, done this, or I should have tried out for the college team. So, but looking back and learning from it, right, and going like, okay, there was those limiting beliefs, that maybe stopped me from doing that, and then, like you said, moving forward, you get to make those different decisions. So.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the mind that I had, in my early 20s. So it would have been a real good help. But that's life.
We would both be living very different lives if
Yeah.
we had the mindset now 20 years ago.
Yeah.
we wouldn't even be in the same space. Like, who knows where we would be if we had this 20 years ago. So can't regret it too much. Just learn from all those processes. That's what we do with the different experiences we have in life, whether we're successful or not. We learn from all of it. So I like that, Paul. So again, make sure you're sending in your questions to the show and try to get them featured on our episodes. Send them into actionsandlimits@gmail.com. So, Paul, another great guest. I'm excited for all the upcoming ones, and I'm glad that Kawan came on the show and shared his story with us.
Absolutely. For Justin Atherton, this is Paul Fortune. We'll see you next week.
All right. See you next Monday. Thank you for listening to the show. Don't miss an episode. Click and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform, and find us on Instagram and Facebook under Actions and Limits to stay updated on all our upcoming content. Continue to email the show at actionsandlimits@gmail.com for our segment Ask Paul Anything. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.